Hello friends, it's Rachel Archelaus, and today I want to talk about food and beliefs and what creates our bodies and all that good stuff. So if you've ever wondered if eating something for you is bad or good, or if there's a right kind of diet for you, this is definitely a video to watch. So basically, I have had a very interesting relationship with food my whole life. I grew up having celiac disease and I didn't know it. And so I wasn't able to properly digest food, like any food, but especially anything that had gluten in it. And I'm almost half Italian, so pasta and bread and all that stuff was a really big part of my life. I mean, any American that eats a regular diet is gonna have a lot of gluten. I didn't know I was allergic to it. So I was always bloated, always. I could not stand wearing women's clothing that was tight. Like women's jeans would come up to your waist and I couldn't do it. So I always wear men's pants, like from middle school on. I never wore tight clothes. When I was young, I thought I was pregnant, like 6 years old. I didn't even know what it really meant, but I just saw like women with big bellies were pregnant, so I always thought I was pregnant. And none of this really triggered anything with my parents because I don't think celiac was ever really talked about. Gluten intolerance wasn't talked about. They knew I was lactose intolerant, and so I just didn't drink milk. I figured out when I was about 18 or 19 that I had some kind of allergy or intolerance, and that began a very interesting journey. I remember the day that I correlated how food made me feel. I was nannying. This lady who I was nannying for was an amazing baker, and she always had brownies with chocolate chips in them in the freezer already cut up, so like you could eat them on the go. A frozen brownie, holy cow, it's amazing. And so in the morning, sometimes before I would bring the kids to school, I would eat a brownie. And I realized that if I ate a brownie in the morning, I would not be able to walk up the very small hill that went up to the kids' school. And of course, I thought it was just the sugar. Like, oh, okay, like I have a really big problem with sugar. And that was true, but it was also the gluten. Like the fact that the brownie was made with wheat flour was really the big deal. So I started researching as much as I could about food and how it makes us feel and what's good for us and bad for us. And I stumbled into natural hygiene, which happens to contain a very restrictive form of the raw food diet. I didn't really know that celiac was the problem, but I did start to feel better when I was listening to the advice of this natural hygiene movement. Basically, all I was eating was fruits, nuts, seeds, and vegetables, and they were all raw. Now that was a really big departure for me because, I mean, that would be a really big departure for anybody, but I ate regular things. I ate meat, I ate chicken nuggets, I ate candy bars, I ate Wendy's, I mean, I ate anything. So going from that to raw foods was kind of crazy, but I had the inspiration to do it because I thought that it was going to help me feel better. So it wasn't that hard of a transition because it was like early, I was excited, it was amazing. I was, meeting all these new people and reading about all these new things. And so I did that off and on for like 4 or 5 years. And I say off and on because sometimes it was just really hard to be a raw foodie. Like back then, there were no health food restaurants in Connecticut, except for one that was like a vegan restaurant, but it wasn't raw foods restaurant. And it was just, I had to go to New York to get anything like super delicious and raw, and it was just a thing. My family didn't really understand. Again, I didn't know that it was like celiac that I was overcoming that had basically made my intestines not be able to absorb anything else. Like I was malnourished. I was a lot of things. But luckily, they saw that I wasn't as bloated, I had more energy, my skin was clearer, I wasn't as emotional, because before that, I was up and down and not confident and just lots of emotional things happening. So family kind of went along with it, and I did my best on it. But after a few years, it became very, very difficult. As much as I loved how I felt, because I had never felt good. I had always been constipated. I had never been able to fit into like regular clothes the way my body was really designed to wear them. And so there was a lot of positive, but I was also having a really hard time eating like that. And I thought that that was the way. Like, if you're not eating raw foods, what are you doing to yourself? Like, you're killing yourself if you're not eating raw foods. I really drank the Kool-Aid. Because I noticed such a big difference in myself, I attributed that to what I was physically doing, to my physical actions. And I wasn't really aware at the time of vibrational creation, you know? And I didn't see that just because this was working for me at this one time, that maybe it's not the right thing for absolutely everybody. And I was one of those really annoying people who would talk about raw foods like it was the most amazing savior on the planet. And, you know, people had kind of had enough. But I was running, I was gardening, I was like in the best shape of my life, and there were some definite pluses to the whole thing. So anyway, after a long time, it became very, very difficult, and my mind was really not in a good place. I became very obsessive, and I thought that I would be a bad person if I didn't eat my raw cabbage and lemon juice, and it was not fun anymore. It wasn't fun, it was detrimental, it was stressful. And I remember I started eating things like steamed potatoes, and I thought I was doing something wrong. Like, I thought steamed potatoes was like, man, I'm not healthy anymore. What am I doing? It was really ridiculous. And I remember I hosted a raw food potluck that met once a month in my house, and we had a guest speaker coming. His name was Paul Nissen. I think he has a different name now, and he's like kind of doing different things, and he's into like goat milk, and so he's been on a journey too, but I put it in the paper. So I like submitted this press release, and a reporter came to my house and did a whole story on me and then mentioned the event. And the day that came out, I was hungover, which was insane because I didn't drink at all that whole time. And I had quit smoking because I had smoked as a teenager, and you know, it was so funny. So the night before was a good friend of mine's birthday. I went out to the bar with her and her friends, and I got drunk. And that day that I'm like this shining epitome of health in the whole newspaper, I was hungover and not feeling very good. So I just thought that, like, okay, there's something a little bit wrong here. That was also the time when GMOs, genetically modified organisms, were making the headlines. And we were talking about that in the group, and people were doing muscle testing, and I was just kind of waking up to the fact that, like, everything can be seen as wrong. And that's not the space that I wanted to live in. I didn't want to live in the space where everything is wrong. I wanted to live in the space where I felt good and I was excited and I had energy. It was no longer working for me. Like, that lifestyle and that diet were no longer producing that in me. Slowly, I kind of started eating regular foods and was more or less like addicted to new foods when I would eat them. Like, I remember eating tofu pups every day for lunch because they just made my mouth explode with flavor. And, you know, I just worked into other regular foods. But I went back to gluten because I didn't know that I had celiac. I think I tell people that I found out I had celiac when I was 18 or 19, but I didn't. I just avoided gluten for several years because I didn't know that was the actual cause. So I went back to it. I got all the same symptoms that I did before. I eventually slowly went into a very unhealthy lifestyle again of smoking cigarettes and doing the thing. I wasn't happy. Life kind of fell apart for a while. But then, luckily, I found my happy place of no restriction. I can eat whatever I want. I eat intuitively. And I also was aware of this vibrational creation that we all have, that I'm a vibration, food's a vibration, and there is no one way to look at food. A Snickers bar does not have a low vibration and a piece of broccoli has a high vibration. Depending on where you are coming from, where I'm coming from, the Snickers could be absolutely fine and the broccoli could be the problem. So I wasn't looking at everything black and white anymore. I was just doing my best to live in a high vibe place, to feel good, to feel excited, and then letting whatever food was inspired to me enter my body. I have a really strange, interesting, lovely diet these days, and it does include homegrown or farmers market produce, and also Snickers bars, and I'm really into these frozen Kind bar ice creams right now. They are vegan, but they contain sugar. So I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of sugar. I'm not afraid of fat. I'm not afraid of anything else. But I do notice how my body reacts, and because of that, I want certain things that make me feel good. And I only eat things that I'm inspired to eat. I won't eat something just because it's healthy, and I won't not eat something just because it's unhealthy. That's been really working for me for years now, and I feel like every year I get even more comfortable with it, even more relaxed, and these old rules really do fall away. Like last month, I ate a Snickers bar every single day because we bought a case of them from Costco, and I was like, yeah, I'm really into that. And then I didn't buy another one because I didn't feel like eating a Snickers again. I feel like I've transcended this idea of being addicted to foods or addicted to sugar or affected by sugar or whatever else anyone is telling me. You know, like, there is no one thing that's good or bad, and I'm really living into that these days and enjoying it. We're gods here. We create it all. We create the circumstances, the stories, the body, the reactions. So why would anything be off limits that is inspired, that feels good, right? As long as I eat what seems good to me, then I don't have to suffer these negative reactions in my mind or in my body. And of course there's times when I'm eating emotionally or when I'm just like, you know, not feeling good and going to food, but that's so far and few between. I don't even worry about that. I don't beat myself up about what I'm eating or what I'm doing. And I do find myself wanting fresh food and veggies and salads and all that kind of stuff. So it's not even like, you know, the more like processed. It doesn't take over my life. It's not all I want. And I think that's something some people are afraid of. And maybe if you're not used to intuitive eating, you've got to go through that process of eating a bunch of stuff that comes from the freezer or the fryer until you're done with that. Maybe you just got to recalibrate your body and allow yourself to have what you actually want, and, you know, maybe rebound from the restriction. I remember having been raw for a very long time and then coming up to a Halloween. I was at my ex-husband's sister's house, and so they had these big bowls of Halloween candy, and I had one, and I was like, oh my god, I'm eating all of these. I think I ate the whole bowl of Halloween candy because it was such a different experience, and it was like definitely a high. And that, you know, it passed. Like, whatever, I didn't die, nothing bad happened to me, and I didn't just become this like sugar addict that walked the streets. So let yourself go where you want to go, experience what you want to experience. Everything will pass if it's not something that you really want to be in your life full term, and you'll find your place of intuitive eating. I'm not saying that the raw food diet is bad, but I am really glad that I have been kind of unbrainwashed from the rigidness of that and from the beliefs that I accumulated from that. You know, I don't want to think that people are doing harm to themselves by eating cooked foods, and I don't want to feel like I know what's right for anyone else, because I absolutely don't. You know, I was a total know-it-all, and I apologize to my friends and family about all of that. But again, it's part of growing, and because I had never felt good bodily in my life until that, I can totally see how I attributed that to that specific diet. And I think we all do that. You know, they say correlation is not causation. Totally true. And now I know better. And I'm really light on people who are doing that same thing. So let's all get along. Let's enjoy the diet that we choose for ourselves. And I'm really happy to be sharing that I do eat raw food and Snickers in the same day, and it's awesome and I love it. And I don't gain weight because I choose to eat that way. I don't lose weight. It's in here, right? It's in here. And that's all we need to know. So, hope this was enjoyable. Let me know your food story if you have one. And I'll see you guys really soon. Super love. Bye.